So today I get to be with a very interesting human and a very important one too. I get to be with Amedea Tamblyn. She's an osteopath and lives in New York City and is teaching a course on helping understand how to work with infants. So I'm wondering, Amedea, if you could talk a little bit about yourself, your training, and this course that you're offering, in-person course on the art and science of treating infants. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about this topic and course that's really dear to my heart. I'm a UK trained osteopath, which means I trained in the UK in London back in 2006. I qualified, and I've been treating and working with infants and their families since 2007, so quite a while. And in the UK, the course is a 5-year course. It's all osteopathic medicine that you do, and you kind of get an introduction at the very, very end into craniosacral or craniosteopathy. And then for me, it kind of came together when I was sort of a year into working at a practice, and I had the good fortune of having someone there who was treating infants. And she was going on maternity leave, and she said, "Take over my list." And I was like, "Oh my God, how do I do that?" And I don't know, I just shadowed her for a while and did. And of course, I've learned so much along the way and done so many postgraduate courses since. But that's sort of the short version of how I came to working with infants.
And yeah, you are trained in London, right? London
Correct.
School of
Yeah,
Osteopathy.
British College of Osteopathic Medicine. And then I was there for 8 years and then moved to New York and set up a practice in Brooklyn in Park Slope, where I still practice today. It's grown a lot in the last couple of years, but we mostly treat infants. Probably about 60 to 70% of our practice is that. And it's a multidisciplinary clinic. So we have, lactation consultant, pediatric physical therapist, craniosacral therapist. We have different, but all geared towards a similar cause.
Yes, and you're working with my friend Clara Favalli, she runs the Stillpoint school, cranial school there, and I teach at her school too. That's how she told me about you, and we have this both have the similar passions of helping families at the very beginning of their life as families, working with babies and working with healing birth trauma. And I know, like, working with babies, I've done that for many years now, and it's just key to learn. And you're offering this basic course. So I'm wondering if you could tell people out there what it is that you're going to be offering.
Yeah, sure. So it's mid-April. It's going to be in New York City, and really, my goal with this course is to get people started. So it's a foundational course, I would say, in how to approach. I know a lot of people want to work with infants and families, but how do you actually go out and do that? How do you actually start to treat and communicate with families? So, I'll try to break it down, but it's going to be a really big information-packed weekend. But the number one thing I want to focus on is, treating infants is really an art. This isn't like treating a small adult.
Yes.
This is like, you're not only are you treating the infant, you're also treating the parents.
Yes.
You're treating some often very anxious parents. You have to communicate with these parents. So how do you do that? How do you, take a history? How do you understand what the journey has been thus far? Because even if you're seeing them, a 5-year-old infant, or a really young infant, you're talking about an entire history of conceiving, pregnancy, labor, and now here we are with the infant. So you're talking about potentially years here in the making. And so that's all coming into your room. How do you communicate with parents? How do you take a history? How do you understand what has happened? How do you understand what they're going through right now? How do you ask pointed questions that feel like a conversation between you and the parents, but are actually giving you very key information as to what exactly is going on and what you're going to be looking at when you then finally get your hands on the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you gain that trust? How do you gain that, relationship and rapport for the best clinical outcome? Because that's why we're all there. So it's going to be a lot about how to take a history, how to assess, how to communicate with these families. And when I say how to communicate with the families, I'm also talking about how to use the right terminologies that are not scary, and they're not going to leave the session thinking, oh my God, they just said that, this is wrong and that is compressed. And we're not using words like that. We're really going to be understanding, of course, what the birth strain patterns are and how they're affecting the child now, But how are we going to communicate that to the parents? How are the parents going to be partners with you as the practitioner at home? What are the exercises and the things you're going to give them? So a lot of it's going to be focused on that. Then
Oh,
there's going to be, yeah, it's a
sounds
huge,
great.
yeah, it's a huge part though. But then, then we're going to obviously get into specifically how to handle an infant, what to do when they're upset. How do you pivot? How are you flexible? How do you involve the parents into the treatment? Because often they'll want to sit right there up against with you. So how do you handle that moment? And what are the techniques? I mean, I can't get into everything in a 2-day course, but I can give you really practical advice on like, these are the main things that I'm going to be using for these conditions that we will go through in the history, so common presentations, and what are the techniques that we mostly will use, and what are the things that you should be looking for if you need to refer these infants out.
Right.
So that brings me to the last point, which is how do you then collaborate with other healthcare practitioners? Because that's huge.
Yes, it's true. You do need a team approach often. And so for people who want to come, do they have to have cranial skills?
I think that yes, like body work, it would be useful if that's mostly because I say that because that's what's ultimately the goal here is like, how are you going to work with infants? I think that there's maybe even birth workers that could be interested in learning about this because they might want to collaborate with osteopaths, craniosacral therapists, physical therapists, whatever. And they want to understand like, well, why would I send an infant to these people? So
Right.
yeah.
All right, but it'd be nice to have some basic understanding of the craniosacral therapy as a student coming to learn in this online. I mean, no, it's not online, in-person course.
Anatomy and yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. All right. And then some basic assessment tools, and then communication with parents, common presentations, and what to do about that. So it sounds like a wonderful 2-day course, and this is going to be April 13th and 14th.
13th and 14th. Yeah.
It's going to be in New York City. It's being hosted by the Stillpoint Cranial School, and I've put the link here on Facebook. It's in the comments section below, but it's also going to be up in the recording on YouTube so that people can really experience what this is going to be and how to find you. Amedea, you live in New York, you live in Brooklyn, and that's where you have your private practice, right?
Right.
Frame Therapeutics.
Therapeutics. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on today, and I'm looking forward to seeing much more of you and all the things that you're going to bring to
Thanks for having me.
help our students. Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Hold on.